Hi everyone, welcome to another cit-230 class presentation. Initially, we're going to start by reviewing the CSS box model. Then we'll look into what we're here for, the display property, and some popular values for it. And at the end, I will provide you with a link to what I feel is a great demonstration of the display property and how padding and margin flow with it. The CSS box model. We can visualize this if we consider the box properties as layers of an onion. These different layers can be tweaked to modify the appearance and the spacing of the content, with the content as the meat in the middle. The content box can be adjusted with the height and the width adjustments in the CSS for that element. Other properties could be the minimum width, the maximum width, the minimum height, and maximum height. The padding property is the inside margin of the CSS box. It is between the outer edge of the content box and the inner edge of the border. This property can be adjust the size of the border box, among other things. There's shorthand properties and longhand versions of properties that can do the same thing. That is, you can set all four sides at once with the padding property, or by selecting a particular side like padding top, padding right, and padding bottom or padding left properties, you can adjust just that property side, particular side. The border property of a CSS box is a sandwich between the outer edge of the padding and the inner edge of the margin. By default, the border property has a size of 0, making it unseen. But it has a myriad of attributes that can help it be used to modify it. It has 3 required values, which is a little different than others. It has a shorthand and longhand. The longhand are border top, right, border bottom, and border left. Set the thickness, the style, and the color of that side of the border. The border width, the border style, and the border color only set the thickness, the style, or the colors for that all 4 sides of the border at once. You can also set any of the 3 properties of a single side of the border individually, as an example, border left width and border left style and border left color, etc. The margin property is the outer layer of the onion and is the outside of the border layer. The margin is used to push against other CSS boxes in the layout and to give space between the various other elements. I like to think of it as it works similar to kerning between characters, but in this case it's pushing the element between the element boxes on all 4 sides. The margin property behaves mostly like padding, but with the exception of the margin collapsing property. It has a shorthand property of margin and the longhand properties of margin top, right, bottom, and left. One thing to remember with margin, the margin collapse property is when 2 boxes touch each other, and the distance between them is the value of the largest of the 2 touching margins, not the sum of them. Again, something to be aware of. Next is the display property. Here is the reason we're here. The display property is a key property. It is one of the most important, powerful properties in all of the CSS and is applied to every element within CSS. It's very useful in modifying displaying web pages. The CSS specification defines the default display value for all HTML elements. This defines the type of rendering the box for each element. Examples: by default, the div tag will display as a block, and by default, the span tag will display as an inline block. And so it goes for each HTML element. Each has its well-defined default property value. An important note here is, while we're on the default display property values, you should need to understand that changing the default display value on any element only changes the display value of that element. It does not change the type of element it is. As an example, if an inline element is set to display block, it is not allowed to have block elements nested inside of it. The 2 major display property values are block and inline. Block level elements, I like to think of them as the space hogs, which will try to take all the real estate they can grab. Their base elements create a block of content with a line break before and after that particular element. They are usually container elements. These elements will take the full horizontal width of a web page unless their width is modified. Width and height values apply to the block element. Examples of block element level elements are the div, the p for the UL, the header, the footer, the section, etc. The inline element, on the other hand, these are the socially politically correct elements which walk the line. Get it? Line, inline, and conserve space only by taking what real estate they absolutely have to take. Their base elements are not preceded by or followed by a line break. They only take up as much space side by side as they need. You can adjust the margins and paddings as in the width of an inline element, but the height values are ignored, so they only react to horizontal adjustments. Examples of inline level elements are the span, the A, the BR, the EM, strong, and the image. Note, I find it intriguing that the image is an inline element, as I would have configured it to be more of a block-centric element. Next will be a shot of a code of my test HTML file in an editor. We will look at the display property values of the P element. We'll have a ptest1, which is a block element, which should be in green. We have a ptest2, which is an inline element, which should be in red. We'll have a ptest3 element, which is an inline block element, which should be in orange. And the last one is ptest4 element, which is none, which would be in yellow if it does not work right, and we have a problem. What it's supposed to do is not supposed to display at all. This here is a view of the text part of the HTML document showing an example of the text blocks, what they look like before they're modified. The key here will be to watch how the text is lining up around the hello world when we do the display output, which is next. The first display property value is block, which is in green. Note the line breaks between both before and after the block element, and there is nothing on either side of it. It hogged as much space as it could grab. The second element, the display property value, is inline, which is red. Note how it is socially and politically correct. It only takes enough space to do its job, not 1 pixel more. The next display property value is inline block in orange. This one was an interesting one to me, but not as interesting as the last one. So the inline block value acts like an inline display, displaying a whole line of text, and then adds a line block break both before and after the whole line, which I find interesting. Not sure where I would use this one yet, but I'm going to have to think about that one for a bit. The last display property value is none in yellow. Well, we did this one right, and there is no yellow text. To show you where it would normally be, I highlighted the 2 words it would go in between with my mouse. These words are blandit and vestibulum. And yes, I had to practice vestibulum a few times before creating this presentation. At first glance, I thought how strange it was to make a value to not show text. So why would you write text just to hide it? Was my initial reaction to this value. But as we are learning the different small, medium, and large video responsive designs, this property comes into play very well, like having the 10-day weather forecast disappear when the weather gets on a small screen. Sweet, right? Anyway, as you can see, we have demonstrated how some of these display property values work on a web page. In my research for the project, I stumbled over what I felt was an outstanding video, which can provide you with some even greater insights to the display property values. I feel it gives some great examples how you can solidify your understanding of margins and paddings also. To wrap it up, we reviewed the box model, which helps us to understanding display values also. Next, we studied the display property values. We found out there are default values set for each element in HTML, generally most of either inline or block by default. We learned that changing the element's default display value does not change its default values. So you still can't take an inline element and have block elements nested within it. Again, thanks for watching.